Welcome to our lesson about the Cubase 5 project window. This is your main working area in Cubase. In this lesson, we're going to be learning what the areas in the project window do and how to use some of the tools. If I cover the tool in more detail in another chapter, I'll only mention it briefly here. I'm taking the time to go through how this window is set up in some detail because the faster you can work, the better your productivity, and of course, the less frustrated you're going to be. Reducing the number of mouse movements as well as customizing your display go a long way to speeding up your work. This blue bar on the top of the screen is called the title bar. It shows the current project's title, 01.cpr. It also shows the version of the project, Cubase 5, and the type of file that's open, Cubase 5 project. Here's the standard Windows menu strip. Below that, we've got the toolbar. Right-click anywhere on the toolbar to see a list of all the available tools that you can display here. If an item is checked, then it's visible. The checked items show what I've currently got visible, and they're displayed from left to right on the toolbar: view switches, transport buttons, tool buttons, auto scroll, and snap and quantize. Here are the view switches right here. These are the transport controls, the tool buttons, auto scroll here, and snap and quantize options right here. We used all of these tools in the previous section of our course. You can opt for Cubase's presets like Default or Show All. You can also customize your tool display by choosing Setup. Select which items that you want visible. Switch the items between the columns using the arrow buttons here. Let's hide Snap. Select it from the visible column. Press the right arrow. And now Snap Quantize appears in the Hidden Items column and disappears from our toolbar. We can also rearrange the order in which the items display from left to right using the Move Up and Down buttons. This shuffles the tools left and right, respectively. Let's move Auto Scroll to the left because I use that a lot. Just select it and click Move Up until it appears in the leftmost position possible. It's also at the top of my Visible Items column. Cubase lets you store your custom toolbar setup as a preset by clicking this icon, the Store icon. Just set up your interface exactly the way you want, and then you can store it as a preset and select it from this list. Okay, let's press Store to save our current setting. We'll type in a preset name right here. Let's call it VoiceOver Template, and let's press OK. Now my preset is available for selection from this drop-down menu. To remove a preset, just select it and press the trash can button or delete. And the preset disappears from the drop-down menu. Let's close the Toolbar Setup button window, OK? Now let's take a look at this black strip that's right underneath the toolbar. This is called the Event Info line. When you've got something selected in the event display area over here, the info line gives you some basic facts about the file. You can rename files and edit descriptions right from here too, and it changes the file name right on your hard drive. Let's type in a new name here for the file. Press Enter to accept. Let's modify the description too. Press Enter to accept. And the event description as well as the file name appear at the bottom of the event image, updated in real time. Let's click this icon to show the Overview bar. The Overview bar displays a mini version of your project. The blue box, or this blue shadowed area, highlights the part of your project that's currently shown in the event display area. The Overview bar lets you zoom in and out quickly, and also lets you keep track of the project as a whole without affecting your current zoom level. The Overview bar is a pretty convenient way to help you get around a large project very quickly. Let's hide the overview bar by toggling it off with the view switch. Let's also toggle off the event info line by clicking this switch. This panel here is called the Inspector panel. We activate it by clicking the Show Inspector switch. The Inspector panel is a one-stop shop that contains a lot of settings for each track and lets you easily modify all these settings right from one interface. Inputs and outputs, effects, channel settings, a notepad for taking notes. The Inspector panel lets you see at a glance all of the adjustments that you've made to a track. It's a great way to keep track of your history. Up here we've got the Tracklist Header Bar, and this controls track states globally. Let me explain what each of these switches mean. This little arrow here drops down the Track Control Settings menu, and this lets you adjust which controls should appear on your tracks. The default Cubase settings, recording, editing, mixing, and you can select track control settings if you'd like to customize this display even further. The setup window looks pretty similar to the setup window for the toolbar. Next, we can toggle on the In-Place editor for selected tracks. This M button will unmute all tracks. The S button will deactivate all solos. Here we can set all automation to read status or set all automation to write status by clicking on the W button. Here we can show or hide the color selector strip. That'll save us a little bit of room if we hide that. This tool lets us divide the track list, giving us two panes within the single event display area, and this can be helpful when you've got a lot of tracks. Underneath the Tracklist Header Bar is what's called the Track List. This contains all of our tracks. You can move tracks around easily by left-clicking them and dragging them. This changes their order in the mixer window as well. This blue ruler on top of the track display area is called the Project Ruler. This shows the main timeline for your work, as well as the left and right locators. Let's just zoom to our locators. The left and right locators are indicated by these little triangle glyphs here. We can drag and move them right in the Project Ruler. You can't hide the Project Ruler, but you can change its format. Just right-click on it and select another display, like bars and beats, for example, timecode, samples, etc. Let's close the mixer to give us a little more room. This big white window where your tracks show is called the Event Display Area. It's your main work area in Cubase. There's vertical and horizontal scrolling tools to help you get around this window. There's a few sliders on the side of the windows. The one in the top right corner will zoom the size of the wavelength in your events. Here's the vertical zoom slider. And here's the horizontal zoom slider. And this lets you get quickly in and out without having to activate the zoom tool. Under the Event Display area is the Project Properties and Status line. And this line shows the audio properties of the project as well as the disk space remaining for the current project location. Now let's go back up to the toolbar and review what these tools do. Many of these tools we've used already in this course, so you'll be familiar with how they work, and some of the tools we cover in more detail elsewhere in the course. Some of these tools also appear in the floating transport panel, and you can hide them in one display and show them in another, or show them in both, etc. For example, the transport buttons here that control recording and playback of your work also appear in the transport panel. At the far left, we have the Activate Project button, and this button can't move. You can't have more than one project active at a time, even though you can have more than one project open. Click the Activate Project button to activate the project that you want to work on. All the editing windows will automatically adjust to display the content according to the settings of your active project. Now, if for some reason all your controls are grayed out or not available and you've got more than one project open, just make sure that this button is blue so that your current project is active. Okay, let's take a look at the next tool. It's called the Constrain Delay Compensation button. We enable this button if you hear delay when you're recording live audio or playing VST instruments. This will help your computer out a little bit. Here's a performance meter showing ASIO time usage and disk cache usage. If any of these get to the top and show red, you may have some hardware issues to sort out. This is a tool you'd keep visible if, for example, you are noticing some artifacts in your recording and you want an at-a-glance view of the load that you're putting on your system. This is the auto scroll button. When this button is active, it's blue, and the screen follows the position of the cursor as it moves forward in time. Your screen will basically scroll along with your work. Let's show you how this works. And the screen shifted to follow the cursor. Let's deactivate auto scroll, reposition the cursor near the right edge of the screen. And now the screen position doesn't follow the cursor. Let's stop our playback. New to Cubase 5 is this subtool, Suspend Auto Scroll when editing. If you are using the editing tools while this is active, you can suspend the auto scroll function, which lets you continue to hear playback while remaining in the same part of the window. Here are the view switches that quickly show and hide parts of the project window. The inspector here is the first switch. Next is the event info line, the overview bar, the pool. We'll talk more about what the pool does later on. This is basically a one-stop shop where you can see at a glance all of the files that you're using in your current project. Let's click the X to close the pool. And the final switch opens and closes the mixer. Again, the switches are blue when they're toggled on. Here are the transport controls. Return to 0 or previous marker. Go to next marker or project end. Cycle mode. Stop, play, and record. This button toggles open the automation panel where you can control all types of automation from one interface. We can close the automation panel by clicking in the top right corner or clicking on the toggle. Next, we've got the Global Automation Mode selector. Here's where we choose the default automation mode, touch, auto latch, or crossover. We're going to learn more about how these work in our lessons on automation. Here are the left and right locator buttons. Just click L or R to go to each of the locators. You can also enter the values manually in the fields next to the locator buttons. These fields let you quickly see exactly where the locators are currently positioned. Let's change the position of our right locator to 25. And now our right locator appears at bar 25, even though our project ruler displays in seconds and minutes. These are the arranger controls. They help us manage arranger tracks. These used to be called play order tracks, and this is Cubase's tool for helping us experiment with different arrangements of our work. I'm going to need to hide some of the tools that we've just looked at because there isn't room at this recording resolution to view all of the tools. If for some reason you find that a tool you've checked is visible is not available for you on your toolbar, that's probably why. It's just too far over to the right for you to see. So you're going to have to hide some of the other tools to let you see it. Let's hide some of the tools that we've already talked about. The performance meter, auto scroll, view switches, transport buttons, automation mode, locators, arranger controls. Okay, now let's talk about the time display. These numbers here represent the primary and secondary time display. We can switch their values from the transport panel, and we can also exchange the values here as well. And next we have the Go-To marker buttons. Once you've set up a marker, you click on the number that you've assigned to that point in your project to move the cursor to that point in time. It's a pretty convenient way to jump around to frequently used stop points in your song like bridge, chorus, verse, etc. Next are the edit tools. Many of these we've looked at previously. On the far left, we've got the Object Selector, the Range Selector, Split, Glue, Erase, Zoom, Mute. Here's the Time Warp tool, and it's got a couple sub-options that we access by clicking that downward-facing arrow, Warp Grid, and Warp Grid Musical Events Follow. Next is the Draw tool. You can use the Draw tool to create an empty part on a track, to create automation points, or to draw in MIDI notes and other data. Next is the Line tool, and we can also use this for drawing automation. Let's click on the menu flyout arrow. We've got a few other shape options as well in addition to line: parabola, sine, triangle, and square. The speaker icon is the Scrub tool or Audition tool. We can use this tool to quickly audition a part or an event without having to solo it or mute all of the other tracks. Next is the Color Selector. Double-click on this icon. This lets us change Cubase's pre-assigned colors. Select a color. We single-click to select a color and then just click on the event to which you want to apply that color. The cursor will appear as a paint bucket. Next, we've got the Trim tools. These are used to trim the starts and ends of your events or to move them left and right. Next is the Key Signature drop-down menu. We can choose from the available key signatures. Here are the Snap and Quantize tools. These tools help you edit your events by aligning your movement to a grid that you customize. I'm just hiding some of these tools. Like many other programs with a Snap feature, we use the Snap function in Cubase to more easily position our work and to navigate around our work. Cubase lets us customize it quite a bit. Click here to turn Snap mode on or off. This is the Snap type. Here we select Grid type. And on the right we select the Quantize type. We'll be explaining this in greater detail in our lessons on Snap and Quantize. Snap to zero crossing. This is a very useful tool. Activating this means that splitting and sizing of audio happens at places where the amplitude of your wavelength is zero. And this helps you avoid creating pops and clicks when you're editing audio. Let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see the audio wavelength up close. By the way, even though I've hidden the editing tools, a right click in this area will pull up a pop-up menu where I can select an editing tool. Previously, the Color Selector was active. With a right click, I've returned back to the Object Selector. If we make any cuts where we have an amplitude of greater than zero for the wavelength, we're likely to get a bit of distortion or some noise or something. We're better off making any cuts where the wave touches this line, that is, where the amplitude of the sound wave is at zero. Activating the Snap to Zero Crossing tool will assist with this process considerably. Okay, let's deactivate the Snap tools, Snap to Zero Crossing and Snap Mode. If you find that you're not able to navigate around your events the way you want, it's probably because you have Snap toggled on. Okay, here is a Color Selector again. Pulls up the same interface we saw previously where we can select custom colors. And let's apply and exit. Let's zoom to locators now. In addition to what we've talked about here, be alert for any contextual menus. And generally you find that by right-clicking or alt-right-clicking. That's a control click or a control option click for Mac users. Doing this in different regions of the project window can reveal a menu with options that are specifically related to the area in which you click. Often these options are also available from the main menus, but they are easier to find with a right click or a command click. Again, many of the tools that we just glanced at in this lesson we'll be taking a more detailed look at later on in this course. And this concludes our overview of the project window in Cubase 5.